Hello everybody, my name's Stephen Redman. Welcome to Pastor's Library. This is the channel where we talk about everything to do with theology books, maybe books that are on a reading list for a seminary course, for a bachelor's or master's degree in theology or in biblical studies, or maybe they're just books that have piqued your interest. Maybe you're having a look around for something to help you with a little Bible course that you're being part of in your church. Whatever it is, if you like what I have to say today, please leave us a thumbs up and remember to subscribe and click on the bell, because that's the way these channels work. The algorithm rules, okay? If you have anything to say about this today, any comments, or if it raises any questions, or if you have any suggestions for me for future episodes, please feel free to leave a comment below. I don't have access to an infinite number of books, but what I do have is substantial for me, and I do try to comment wherever I possibly can. So, today we're going to talk about my favourite commentaries on the book of Ruth. Ruth, Joshua, Judges, Ruth. We're going to talk about that very short 4 chapters in our Old Testament that tells a wonderful story of a foreigner being accepted into the lineage of Christ, which is truly a wonderful thing, showing that God has a welcome for any that will truly follow him. So I'm going to start with a few thinner volumes. So this is a book called The Asia Bible Commentary on Ruth by Havila Daramajar. I don't know if I've said that anything like, but that's my stab. This is a commentary that came out in 2019. It's part of the Asia Bible Commentary series. They did a single volume commentary on the Bible and then produced these. They haven't done the whole Bible yet, but there's quite a lot of them out there. And the advantage of these really is that they give us a view as Westerners. They give us a view of Asian eyes on the text, and quite frankly I find these quite helpful. So this is 138 pages. I haven't seen them any in back versions, so I think they're all paperback, but they're quite reasonable as paperbacks. Now, what I would say to you about this one is, if you don't have any interactions with Asian people and you don't have any desire to have any interactions with them, and if you don't want a fresh view of things that might help you, then just don't bother. But if you, like me, I have a couple of Indian families in our church, and I have a bit of interaction with some other Asian families, I think it's good for me as a pastor to see. And I have to say, I've found this to be broadly helpful. So, when it comes to all of these commentaries, I'm going to talk a little bit about what it says in chapter 3, particularly around verses 6, 7, 8. And she says that when Boaz asks who Ruth is, Ruth lies at his feet, or perhaps by his side, because the original Hebrew is not entirely clear on that. But when Boaz asks who she is on the threshing floor, she replies and tells him who he is. That's quite a little bit of a viewpoint that I hadn't picked up on any other book I'd read. So Ruth is a book where ordinary people rise above their ordinariness. And Ruth is not just named Boaz, she is attached to Yahweh. And I think largely that sentence is one of the most powerful I've read in any. She is attached to Yahweh. And what more can you ask for a person who is ethnically Moabite? She did marry an Israeli. He died, which some people might have looked upon as God's judgment on him for marrying that evil witch from Moab, who we all know what the Moabites are like. But she gets a second chance. She is welcomed into the family of God. Not only that, she becomes in the lineage of the Christ because David is her grandson. What a tremendous story. I actually like that. I think it's a very, very good little commentary. James McCowan, this is the Two Horizons Old Testament commentary. These as a series are actually rather good. They largely have a lot of emphasis on the theology of the book as well as on commentary of the book as well. So this was published in 2015. It's 152 pages. I think that's a pretty good size actually for 4 chapters of a book in our Bibles. And this book sees links between Ruth and Genesis, like the continuation of the genealogy of Judah, which goes to Perez in Genesis, and in Ruth starts again at Perez and goes to David. And that's a real interesting concept. The theme of offspring in Genesis leads us to David in Ruth. And how wonderful is that? There really is something of God's overarching plan that a Moabitess widow got involved in and was willing to make her mother-in-law's God her God. I think that's solid. It also talks about links to Deuteronomy, Judges, Samuel, talks about themes of land, of redemption, even a discussion of universalism, would you believe? There are also some character studies. Quite seriously, this, I think, is a really good commentary, particularly if you're interested in the theology of Ruth. This one, the Interpretation series, is written by Catherine Doob Sackenfield. Now, Catherine Sackenfield is someone who has a high degree of reputation. This was written in 1999, and it's 91 pages. She talks about verse 9 in chapter 3, saying when it says, spread your cloak over your servant, the literal Hebrew is wing. Spread your wing over me. And that when she is asking this of Boaz, it is a formal request by her for the establishment of a marriage bond. In England, we would say, it must have been February the 29th, the day every 4 years that women can propose to men. I don't think it's like that anymore. I don't think it is. But Boaz mentions wings in his earlier prayer over Ruth. So I think that's a good idea. Amazingly, I've seen it quoted in lots of other commentaries, and by lots I mean most. So that's a good one. And the interpretation commentaries are very inexpensive and often quite underrated, but I didn't think that was a bad one at all. This is the Abingdon Old Testament commentary on Ruth by Judith Fentress Williams. This was published in 2012. It's 152 pages. This highlights the theme of identity in this commentary. It talks about insider becoming, or outsider becoming insider. It emphasises the similarity with Genesis 19. That's the birth of Moab, when Lot's daughters got their father drunk and sleep with him. And she makes a great song and dance about these passages being parallel with Ruth chapter 3. And of course, in Ruth, the outsider has become an insider. So this is an interesting transition. Quite seriously, I thought this book offers a lot. Again, this was inexpensive, paperback, 2012, still got plenty of years in it for quotability. It's highly endorsed by Stephen L. Cook, by Walter Brueggemann and some others. This is definitely a worthwhile volume. Now, the New Interpreter's Bible Commentary, these are volumes that are good for wedging doors open. And basically, you get a lot in one volume. So this has volume 2 has got the introduction to narrative literature, Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1, 2 Samuel, 1, 2 Kings, 1, 2 Chronicles, commentaries on all of those. So there's an awful lot of value in this, even if it in England costs you about £70. It's not cheap, but it is a lot of value. So this is 45 pages for Ruth. So this is by Kathleen A. Robertson Farmer. And have you noticed how many hyphenated surnames we've had so far? And they're all women. Wonder why. But this was published in 2015. And if we go to Ruth chapter 3, verses 8 to 9, Ruth is identified as a foreigner in chapter 2, verse 10, a family servant, the word is Sifa, in chapter 2, verse 13, and now in verse 9 of chapter 3, she is a servant with a higher social standing than a Sifa. And Amma was eligible for marriage. And 3 progressively more familial terms are gone through to describe herself to Boaz. I thought that was a good insight by Robertson Farmer. That's an excellent volume. And remember, if you're buying one of these and you just think getting it for Ruth, remember when you need one on 1 and 2 Samuel and Kings and Chronicles and Joshua and Judges, they're there as well. So good value. Up to now, I'm not particularly giving you any sort of huge pecking order. I think all of these have got value. This is 2020. It's the New Beacon Bible commentary on Ruth, Song of Songs, and Esther. So you've got 3 books in one. Ruth is written by Sarah B.C. Dirk, published in 2020. 77 pages are on Ruth. Now, in chapter 3, there are a number of commentators that suggest that there is a euphemism going on, that there is a hint or a tease going on for sexual intimacy between Boaz and Ruth. And whereas most commentators say, well, this is not likely, these people are being held up to us as paragons of virtue, Sarah is not quite so sure, particularly about the intention of Naomi, arguing that it was Naomi's intention that they should be intimate together. Now, I'm not quite sure how she gets to that point, but suffice to say it's a little bit of a different point to many of the others. The way she talks about it, there is more shock in Boaz's realisation of the presence of a woman at his feet than any of the English translations can quite cope with. She says that the level of shock in the Hebrew is much more evident. All of these commentaries, they've got something different to other ones. What I would say about this range of commentaries, they're beautifully easy to read. They are academic, but they're not technical. They are very, very helpful indeed. And whereas I would sort of say I slightly felt I disagreed a bit with Sarah Dirk, I'm very glad to have the commentary because I think it does raise issues that one at least has to be able to answer. This is the Story of God commentary, and it's Ruth and Esther, and it's by Marian Ann Taylor. Now, this was published in 2020, so it's very recent. 80 pages are devoted to Ruth. So, again, this is not a terribly big amount, but it is almost quite representative and helpful. The layout of these pages is really good. I think it's an excellent volume. And the whole series is talking of an overarching theme about the Bible is one big story. These different books in our Bible are all working as part of the great narrative. So here, Marian Ann Taylor says that the bigger plan here is not Naomi's or Ruth's, but God's, who has in mind his own son. Now, I like the way that she just comes straight out with this. This, of course, is in connection with the theme. These are the Story of God commentaries. But she makes it quite clear that God has a plan in this, and it's about bringing his own son into the world. She asks the question, was Ruth going to be a second wife to Boaz? Was he a widow? Was he married already, and was he taking her as a second wife? None of that's clear, but she does at least raise that question. But she really, really hammers home that Ruth and Boaz are presented to us as literal models of integrity and honour. And I like that presentation. I believe that to be true. And I did feel that this offered quite a lot. Now, the Anchor Yale Bible, these are academic volumes, and they can vary, I think, in the quality. But this one is good. It's by Jeremy Shipper. It was published in 2016. It's 221 pages, which is quite a lot, particularly when the pages are quite heavy. There's a lot of text on them, and these have a layout that's much more similar than, say, the Word Biblical Commentary is than others. This is certainly a worthwhile volume. What I would say to you is this has got fantastic bibliography. 13 pages from 2016. This means this is very fresh, very up to date, lots of good things in there. If you want to do further studies or further investigations on Ruth, it's worth getting this just for the bibliography. So, Boaz refers to Ruth as a woman of worth. The narrator describes Boaz as a mighty man of worth in chapter 2, verse 1. Boaz addresses Ruth as a social equal, suggesting that they are, after all, a good match for each other, which is quite a reach for Boaz, a big top man in his community, and he is reaching out to Ruth and saying, we're on a level, you and I. And I think that's got so much to teach us about the way that God has reached to us in Jesus, and a lot to think about there. So actually this one, which also wasn't expensive, and it's a hardback, I think that's a very good book to have on your shelf. Now, the Apollos series, this one is by Daniel Hawk. It's published in 2015, so very close in time towards that one. 166 pages. Hardback again. This is really excellent. It's got a very, very good bibliography. And again, you know, it is 10 years old now, but it's only 10 years old. This does give you a lot of connections. The bibliography is split up into commentaries and other works. We've got 16 pages of bibliography in this book. So in chapter 3, Hawke says that by moving to facilitate a new relationship and life for Ruth, Naomi is now demonstrating that she is a true mother to this Moabite woman. If you like, Ruth is demonstrating her strong relationship to someone who historically would have had nothing in Israel. So I think that's a good point. And Ruth suggests a strategy that Boaz might use to claim her in marriage, and at the same time diffuse the scandal of her Moabite heritage. It was a big deal for Boaz to accept the terms of the offer that Ruth was making to him, and he could have been ruined by his connection to a Moabitess, but she is offering him a legitimate way, and it's the method he then uses, which is all very interesting, I think. Again, I think I paid £19 or something for this. This is a very good series of commentaries. This one, an excellent edition. Okay, not many left now. This one is the NIVAC, the New International Version Application Commentary on Judges and Ruth. It's by K. Lawson Younger Jr. It's published in 2002. 102 pages are given over to Ruth. You know from contact with this series yourself, or with other comments that I've made about it in the past, This is the pastor's first choice for application. If you follow the method that some of my friends do of never speak without an application for the scripture, then this is the first one to go to, because it has an application for every section of the written word. So here, Boaz could have seen her as Moabite trash. This is a quote, scavenging from the garbage cans of Israel and then corrupting the people with whorish behaviour. We're thinking now of her coming and laying next to him, uncovering his feet, whatever that means. But this is the true hesed, that true mercy, that true love-encrusted mercy of his own. He sees her as a woman equal in status and character to himself. This, I thought, had some very good bits in it. I often don't look at this series as being quite as academic as some of the others, but actually I thought this particular volume is very good. In fact, if I must still be honest with you, all of the commentaries I've shown you today are good. I can't really say any of them are ones I'd wished I hadn't bought. They really are excellent. Now, I've only got 3 or 4 left. This is the Zondervan Exegetical Commentary on the Old Testament. Now, these are all fairly new. This one is by Daniel I. Block, top-notch commentator, really excellent. This whole series, I've got plenty of border room for you to make notes. They have clarity in the text, excellent use of headings and bold inserts and stuff like that. These are very good. There are sections that are grey background, which have a particular theme inserted into the text. These are all really cleverly put together commentaries. And I would say to you, whatever book of the Bible you're looking for, never ignore the Zondervan Exegetical Commentaries, because these are very good. This one was published in 2015. It's 291 pages. That's a big commentary on 4 chapters. So what does this have to say that's slightly different to the others? Well, whereas there are some euphemisms in chapter 3, Block identifies Boaz as a good man and Ruth as a good woman. There is nothing untoward going on, he says, just an appeal for the establishment of a new relationship. What more could you ask for? I actually think this is a really good commentary by Daniel Block. I would put it up there in my top few. I suppose now I'm making a bit of a gap between the others and the ones I'm on now. I do love the word biblical commentary, even though some of the older ones have had no attention paid to layout and have been designed by someone to try and make you drop asleep before you can read everything. This was published in 1996. I haven't checked. There might be an update to this, but I haven't got it. 268 pages. Frederick Bush suggests that his awakening, the awakening of Boaz, where she uncovers his feet and then sometime in the night he wakes up, he suggests that that was just simply from the code, and that a fear of female night demons, which was cultural in the time of this being written, might be involved. These are critters that were assumed to attack sleeping men, and that would then explain why he says, "Who are you?" So that explains Boaz's question. What I would say about this, I wouldn't want to be without the word biblical commentaries. I really wouldn't. This is very, very good. There's a tremendous amount of detail. There are lots of little things in here, which I don't know that anyone else really does put in. But I just want to commend it to you. But if you struggle, if you're a bit dyslexic, if you struggle to read very intense text, when the paper isn't exactly fully white, the text isn't always fully black, then you might struggle a bit with it. But seriously, I think Bush has done a great job with that, and I'm very, very happy with it. A new one to me is the JPS Bible Commentary on Ruth. I've stuck my notes on the front because I thought it was the back. But of course, this is the thing about the JPS. It starts at the back and works to the front. So, you open the page and you've got the JPS Bible commentary on Ruth, and the commentary is behind it, not in front of it. So this is by Tamara Cohn Eskenazi and Tikva Freimer Kensky. Now, Kensky died very early into this project, and Eskenazi took over the project. And she is extremely full of praise for her predecessor and thanks her for all of what she's done. But Eskenazi is a very significant author in her own right these days. And I think that this really does have something to offer. So 2011 published, 103 pages, but these pages are very interesting. They start off with sort of some essays about an introduction, things like authorship, things like the genre, the style, and connections with other books, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, and there are lots of special terms that it highlights that are used in the book. Then you get so many pages in, which feels like about a third of the book, maybe a bit more than a third of the book, and then you get to the commentary. So this is very distinctive in style and layout. The commentary always follows the same pattern in these type of commentaries. You've got the Hebrew, and then the translation into English, and then commentary underneath. Now, here you've got quite a lot of commentary. Some pages have less, but a lot of them have just a little bit at the top, then all the commentary underneath. And this means that there's actually a lot more commentary in here than you think. I mean, whichever way you look at it, there are only 4 chapters, and there are a significant amount of pages, all of which are big. I mean, this is a bigger book than a normal commentary, bigger pages. Now, I really liked this so much. I've only recently got hold of the Pentateuch and I've gone through them. And I bought this next, and I really, really do like this. I think that, the author and the author that she took over have really had a lot to offer on this. For example, I was quite taken by the section entailing the handing over of a sandal as part of making a deal. And I feel that she says so much more about that than you would get in a standard commentary. She talks about the power of love channeled as Hesed, of that kindness, that generosity, that mercy that goes beyond obligation. She says the key line in the whole book is the one where Ruth says to Naomi, "Your people shall be my people, and your God my God," which is verse 16 of chapter 1. And she points out some interesting things. For example, Ruth is the most detailed Old Testament biblical narrative about widows. When you think about it, that has to be the case. The introduction, for example, gives a full breakdown of what Levirate marriage was. And that's very helpful because you can look it up on Google or you can look it up in Bible dictionaries. But sometimes I think the comments will be limited. But she really has a handle on this. I seriously like this. And I think it offers an awful lot. Right, now I'm going to just go to what I think is my top commentary on Ruth. Now, this is the 1988 version of the New International Commentary on the Old Testament. It's by Robert L. Hubbard Jr. And because it's 1988, you shouldn't be quoting from this in university essays. But it's very, very, very good. What were they going to do to replace that in 2023 when they brought one out by Peter H.W. Lau? Well, of course, he is a student of Robert L. Hubbard. So these two men know each other well. Robert Hubbard has tutored him, he has encouraged him in the way, and if you like, Peter has the very, very best bits of Robert's commentary in his. So I would suggest to you, I mean, if you pick that up for $5 somewhere, then that's a very, very good price. But Peter Lau is the one to go for. His 2023 volume has 342 pages. This is a truly academic commentary. When I say that, I'm not saying it's technical, but it is very, very good indeed. And Lau suggests that the purpose of this book is purely to give a context to the rights of David to be king, and also to really point out God's kindness, God's hesed in the life of Boaz, reflected in his stretching his wings, his garment over Ruth and marrying her. This is really my number one go-to book for Ruth. It really is. Do I just love the last sort of half dozen I showed you? I really do. Do I like the rest of them? Actually, probably more than any other video I have done on commentaries. I like all of these. I think they've all got something to offer. Right back to the Asian one I started off with. These are very, very good range of commentaries. But I really want to stress to you that this is the one that I would run out of my office with if I could only rescue one from a fire and I was looking for commentaries on Ruth. I mean, this really is an excellent commentary. I cannot overemphasize how good it is. Now, I've said a lot. I didn't want this video to go on and on and on. But what I would suggest to you is this book I would recommend as my top commentary on Ruth, and I would suggest it to you. I would be very surprised if you found anything that was fundamentally that much better. But the JPS commentary is brilliant. The Word Biblical commentary is brilliant. The Zondervan exegetical commentary is brilliant. The Nivak is, and you know, the Apollos and the Anchor Yale, they're all very, very good. They all have something to offer. Fundamentally, what I would say is that with the possible exception of the Nicot commentary, most of the key points are covered by most of these authors. But this is the beauty of commentaries building on each other. We climb on the shoulders of giants. Why should we use a commentary? Well, when giants of the faith have left behind for us their works, we're stupid to try and just build on it again from scratch. It's good to consult these people. And seriously, I think Ruth in particular is an absolute excellent example of how other men and women have looked at each other's work and produced something better by combining their efforts. So these are good commentaries. I hope you find room for one or two in your library, and may God bless you. Remember to give us a thumbs up on YouTube. Also remember to subscribe and click on the bell. And if you've got anything to say, to comment, even if it's a query about something I've said or possibly a suggestion for a future episode, don't hesitate. Pop it in the messages below and I will try to get round to them all in due course. So I've nothing else to say today except simply one word, which is bye!